The torrential rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of our Manhattan bridal penthouse like a shattered pearl necklace, making the warm golden light in the room tremble and flicker. I had just taken off my high heels. The hem of my designer wedding dress, stained with champagne from the reception, still pooled at my feet. Suddenly, a phone rang piercingly nearby. Andrew Walker jumped as if on command, grabbed his phone and headed straight for the terrace. His movements were so hasty it was as if he were terrified I'd overhear. He stood with his back to me, shoulders slightly hunched, speaking in a very low voice. But the soundproofing in the suite wasn't perfect, and I could still make out fragments of his words. Andrew lowered his voice. "How did you manage to do this right now? You know what today is." He paused, then his tone softened. Okay, just don't go anywhere. Wait for me at the arrivals curb at JFK. I'm coming to get you right now." I walked barefoot toward the terrace door. The freezing wind laced with raindrops hit my face, making me shiver from the chill. Who was calling at this hour? I didn't raise my voice, but every word was heavy with an undeniable question. Andrew spun around sharply. A flash of panic appeared in his eyes for a fraction of a second, immediately replaced by annoyance. Nobody. A friend got stranded at the airport because of the storm. I'm going to go pick her up. Saying this, he walked past me into the bedroom to grab his black trench coat from the rack. A friend, I stepped forward, blocking his path, and accidentally brushed against the ice-cold metal button of his coat. "Andrew, tonight is our wedding night. It's pouring so hard outside the FDR, drive is probably flooded. What kind of friend is worth a groom abandoning his bride to rush out into a storm?" Andrew frowned. His tone dropped 3 degrees colder. "Catherine, don't make a scene. She's a young woman, it's her first time in the city, and she doesn't know anyone. If she gets soaked and catches a cold, then what?" I let out a bitter laugh and pointed toward the living room area. The champagne tower from our private after-party hadn't even been cleared away yet, and the wedding floral arrangements still hung on the walls. "I'm a young woman, too. We just exchanged vows. We just drank our wedding toast with intertwined arms. And you're leaving me alone in this empty bridal suite without worrying that my heart might freeze." "What do you mean, freeze?" Andrew yanked my hand away with such force that I stumbled. The trench coat was already on his shoulders. "I'm just gonna pick someone up. I'll be back in an hour tops. Be a good girl. Stay here and don't throw a tantrum." "Andrew." I raised my voice, feeling my throat tighten. "You're going to pick up Allison Bennett, aren't you?" At those words, Andrew's face instantly changed. The last remnants of his fake patience evaporated. "Yeah, so what? He decided to stop hiding." A look of self-righteousness even flickered in his eyes. "She specifically changed her flight just to make it in time to congratulate us on our wedding. Now she's stuck at the airport. I can't just abandon her." "Congratulate us on our wedding." The words sounded utterly absurd. My chest tightened with a suffocating sense of betrayal. If she really wanted to congratulate us, why didn't she show up at the ceremony? Why choose this exact rainy wedding night? "Andrew, do you even have a place in your heart for me? Your brand new wife?" "I told you don't make a scene." Andrew's voice dripped with blatant irritation. He grabbed an umbrella from the foyer without even slowing his stride. "I'll be back soon. Stop overthinking everything." "If you walk out that door right now, you can never come back to this house," I shouted at his back. My voice was filled with absolute resolve. There wasn't a hint of tears. Andrew's footsteps halted for half a second, but he never turned around. The heavy front door slammed shut with a deafening bang, shaking the framed wedding photo on the wall. Downstairs, the roar of a sports car engine soon echoed, gradually dissolving into the relentless noise of the rain. I stood perfectly still, staring at the discarded hem of my wedding dress scattered on the floor. I didn't shed a single tear. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text message from Thomas, our family's estate manager, asking, "Would you like me to bring you a cup of hot milk, Miss A?" I looked at the screen and quickly typed 3 words. Activate the protocol. Thomas was an old, loyal retainer of the Sterling family. He had worked for my grandfather for decades. When I got married, I specifically brought him with me to the Walker residence, exactly for a day like this. The so-called protocol had been drawn up by my family and me long before the wedding. If Andrew ever betrayed me, I would walk away with everything I brought into the marriage, leaving absolutely nothing behind. I walked into the bedroom, picked up my private cell phone from the nightstand, and dialed Thomas. My voice was as calm as if discussing the weather. "Thomas, contact the family's chief financial officer immediately. Transfer all my assets, the entire $1 billion nuptial trust fund, including the cash, the stock portfolios, and the real estate holdings. Move it all to my private offshore accounts. Don't leave a single red cent." "Very well, Miss Sterling. I will arrange it immediately." And I added pack all my personal belongings from the Walker penthouse and send them to my secure compound in the Hamptons immediately. Move quickly and make sure none of the Walker staff notices a thing. Understood, miss. Sterling. Rest assured, everything will be done within half an hour. Hanging up, I walked to the walk-in closet, opened a hidden compartment in the back, and pulled out my pre-prepared identification documents and the signed prenuptial agreement. That $1 billion trust was the leverage my family, the Sterlings, had given me. It was not meant to be a charity fund to support Andrew and his longtime flame. I changed into a pair of comfortable flats, grabbed a pre-packed overnight bag, and took one last look at the room that was supposed to be the beginning of my happily ever after. As soon as I stepped out of the Walker building, the cold rain dampened my hair. A black Cadillac Escalade sent by Thomas was already waiting silently by the curb. The driver, seeing me, immediately rushed over with an umbrella. Getting into the SUV, I was greeted by a wave of warmth and the faint, soothing scent of sandalwood. I rubbed my chilled fingers, and just as I settled in, Thomas called. Miss Sterling, I've already spoken with the CFO. The asset transfer orders have been executed. The liquid portion of your $1 billion trust will be fully routed into your overseas private accounts within 30 minutes. The legal team is currently handling the transfer of titles for the shares and real estate. All documents were prepared in advance. There will be no leaks. I leaned back against the leather seat, watching the streetlights blur past the tinted window, and asked indifferently, "Did the Walker staff suspect anything?" "Rest easy, ma'am. I told them you had an urgent family emergency at the Sterling estate and asked for help packing some personal items. They assume you're simply staying with your parents for a few days. No one suspects a thing." "Good," I said. "Don't forget my jewelry, my designer dresses from the master suite, and my personal stationery from the home office. Also have my limited edition Porsche, the one parked in the Walker garage, sent to the Hamptons compound. Leave them with nothing." "Noted, Miss Sterling. Your Porsche is already en route. Our driver Peter is taking it to the Hamptons. Your personal belongings have been packed into 3 large trunks and will be delivered shortly." The Escalade turned onto a quiet, tree-lined avenue, driving further and further away from the Walker penthouse. I took out my phone and blocked every contact associated with Andrew, his iMessage, his personal cell number, his social media, and even his corporate line. Having done that, I sent a brief text to my grandfather, protocol activated. Show the Walker family no mercy. Barely a moment after the message delivered, my grandfather called. His voice carried its usual authoritative weight, but beneath it lay genuine concern. "Kate, did that Walker punk disrespect you? Don't you shed a tear over him? The Sterling family always has your back. That $1 billion trust was given to you as armor. If he dares utter a single word of complaint, I'll make sure his family never raises their heads in this city's business circles again." I gripped my phone, tightly swallowing the lump in my throat, though my voice remained steady. "Grandpa, don't worry, I'm not upset. I just finally saw his true colors and realized he isn't worth my effort. Please keep an eye on the asset transfers. I'm heading to the Hamptons compound now. Once I get settled, I'll come back to the corporate office to help you run the company." "Good. Coming home is what matters. Your seat on the board has always been waiting for you. Whatever you want to do, Grandpa supports you. And if that Walker boy dares to show his face, just order security to throw him out. I'll handle the fallout." After finishing the call, the SUV pulled up to the heavy iron gates of my Hamptons compound. I had purchased this estate myself before the wedding. The interior was completely to my taste, and the security system was military grade. Only 2 trusted caretakers lived here full-time, ensuring absolute privacy. Stepping out of the car, I saw Thomas waiting at the entrance with 2 staff members. Beside them sat 3 packed luxury steamer trunks. My limited edition Porsche was already parked securely in the garage. Thomas quickly stepped forward and took my bag. "Miss Sterling, a hot bath has been drawn upstairs and the chef has prepared a warm bowl of artisanal soup. Please take a shower, change into dry clothes, and warm up." I nodded and followed him inside. As soon as I entered the living room, a secure video call came in from the family CFO. I motioned for Thomas to give me some privacy, sat on the sofa, and answered. "Miss Sterling reporting in. The liquid portion of your $1 billion, trust totaling $300 million, has been fully transferred into 5 private accounts across different international jurisdictions. The remaining $700 million in stocks and real estate, including your equity in Sterling Group 3 commercial skyscrapers in Manhattan and 2 estates abroad, have all been legally reassigned by our corporate lawyers. The ownership of these assets is now entirely severed from the Walker family. Even if Andrew Walker tries to audit the trail, he won't find a single breadcrumb." I gave a slight nod. "Excellent work. Now monitor the Walker family's cash flow, especially Andrew's corporate accounts at Walker Investments. The second you see any anomalies, report directly to me." "Understood, Miss Sterling." I will monitor them 24/7 and ensure you receive real-time updates. Ending the call, I walked upstairs. Passing the massive floor-to-ceiling window in the hallway, I glanced at the wall of rain outside. Andrew must still be at JFK picking up Allison Bennett. He couldn't possibly imagine that simply taking a drive to pick up a friend had permanently cost him not only the $1 billion trust fund that could have catapulted his struggling company to the next level, but also his wife, the woman who was supposed to stand by his side. Entering the master's suite, I stripped off my damp clothes and stepped into the bathroom. The scalding water from the shower washed away the biting cold. I stared at my reflection in the fogged mirror. I had thrown the wedding dress away hours ago. My makeup was slightly smudged, but there wasn't a shadow of hesitation left in my eyes, only iron resolve and cold rationality. After showering and changing into silk loungewear, I went downstairs and ate the bowl of hot soup. Thomas approached again to report that all my personal belongings from the Walker penthouse had been inventoried. Nothing was missing, and the extraction had been completely undetected by the Walker staff. I set my spoon down and glanced at the grandfather clock. It was past 2:00 a.m. The storm outside hadn't let up. Andrew likely hadn't returned from the airport yet, and even if he had, all that awaited him was an empty echo. I looked at Thomas. From this moment on, if anyone asks, tell them I have retreated to the main Sterling estate in Greenwich and elevate the compound's security to maximum. No one is to approach the gates without my explicit authorization. Very well, Miss Sterling. I will lock it down immediately. Dawn barely broke through the heavy clouds, casting a cold gray light over the Walker penthouse. The front door clicked open, and Andrew burst in, soaked to the bone. Muddy water dripped from his black trench coat and his hair clung messily to his forehead. His face bore the exhaustion of a sleepless night and poorly concealed irritation. He tossed his wet umbrella into the foyer and without taking off his shoes stormed into the living room muttering impatiently, "Catherine, I'm back! Enough of this childish sulking." The living room was dead, silent. The crystal chandelier was off. Only a single wall sconce emitted a faint glow. Ribbons and flower petals from yesterday's wedding were scattered across the floor, creating an atmosphere of desolate ruin. He looked around. No sign of Catherine. He checked the custom kitchen, then the formal dining room. Empty. Andrew frowned, pulled out his phone to call her, but realized the battery had died hours ago. Frustrated, he tossed the phone onto the sofa and bounded up the stairs toward the master's suite, thinking to himself, she's probably just throwing a fit in bed. I'll sweet-talk her for a minute, promise her access to some of her family's resources, and she'll get over it. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Andrew pushed it open, but the sight before him made him freeze in his tracks. The massive walk-in closet, which should have been overflowing with Catherine's designer wardrobe, was wide open and completely bare on one side. The vanity table was impeccably clean. All her limited edition jewelry and high-end cosmetics had vanished. Even her favorite silk pillow was gone from the bed. Andrew's heart skipped a beat. A terrible premonition gripped him. He rushed into the ensuite bathroom. One of the paired electric toothbrushes was missing from the marble sink. All her skincare bottles were gone. Only his belongings remained. "Catherine!" he shouted, his voice echoing off the cold marble of the empty suite. No answer. He sprinted through the guest rooms, the home office, even the storage rooms. He didn't find so much as a strand of Catherine's hair. Just then he heard footsteps downstairs. Spinning around, he saw Thomas walking methodically through the hallway, carrying a tray, his face an unreadable mask. Andrew bounded down the stairs and grabbed Thomas by the arm. His voice was erratic and demanding. "Thomas, where is Catherine? Where did she go?" "To her family." Thomas calmly detached his arm from Andrew's grip. His tone was exceptionally measured, carrying a distinct chill of detachment. "Mr. Walker, please unhand me. I have something to inform you about." Andrew's anxiety spiked. He let go and took a half step back, his eyes locked on Thomas. "Where did she go? Tell me right now." Thomas set the tray down on a console table, stood up perfectly straight, and enunciated every single word. "Mr. Walker, Miss Catherine left last night, and she took her entire $1 billion nuptial trust fund with her, down to the very last penny." "What did you just say?" Andrew leaned forward as if he had misheard. His eyes widened. "Took the $1 billion trust. Are you joking? Those assets were already registered under." He cut himself off mid-sentence. Although the Sterling family had provided the billion-dollar trust as backing to protect Catherine's interests, the legal title to all assets remained solely in her name. The Walker family only had the right to leverage it. Now, if Catherine had decided to pull it all out, it would have been effortless. Thomas nodded. His composure remained unbroken. Precisely, Mr. Walker. Last night after your departure, Miss Sterling contacted the family's CFO and legal team. Overnight, she transferred everything, the liquid cash, the equities, the real estate, along with every single personal item she owned in this residence. There is nothing left here that belongs to her. The words struck Andrew like a physical blow. He stood frozen, thunderstruck. His face flushed crimson before draining to a deathly pale. His lips trembled, and for a long time he couldn't form a single word. He remembered what Catherine had shouted at him yesterday. If you walk out that door right now, you can never come back to this house. At the time, he had dismissed it as bridal hysterics. Only now did he realize she wasn't bluffing. She had truly decided to walk away. $1 billion. It was $1 billion. Walker Investments had been suffering a severe liquidity crisis recently and was counting entirely on that trust fund to survive the fiscal year. He had already mapped out exactly how he was going to deploy that capital. How could it all vanish overnight? Andrew staggered, stumbling back 2 steps before collapsing onto the sofa. His hands shook violently. He stared up at Thomas, his voice cracking. Why would she do this? I just went to pick someone up. Is that really a reason to destroy everything? Where did she go? Tell me where she is. Thomas looked down at him with a gaze that held a microscopic trace of mockery. Mr. Walker, when you abandoned your bride on your wedding night to rush out into a torrential storm to meet Miss Bennett at the airport, you should have anticipated this exact outcome. As for where Miss Sterling went, I cannot tell you, because as of today, I am no longer the estate manager for the Walker household. I answer only to Miss Catherine, Miss Bennett. Andrew's heart violently constricted. He remembered that after he had driven Allison to her hotel, she had kept him there talking half the night, wasting hours of his time. Now he realized Allison had done it intentionally. But he hadn't noticed it then. He suddenly lunged up from the sofa, grabbing Thomas's arm again, squeezing so hard he could have snapped the older man's bones. You have to tell me where she is, or I swear I'll... Thomas remained utterly unfazed and easily broke the hold. Mr. Walker, I suggest you worry about the state of your own company. Without that $1 billion and the backing of the Sterling Group, how long do you think your firm will survive? I believe you know the math better than I do. The words hit Andrew's most vulnerable nerve. Drained of all his strength, he collapsed onto the couch once more. Outside, the morning light was brightening the city skyline, but inside Andrew's soul, it was pitch black. He could never have imagined that driving to the airport to pick up Allison would cost him his wife and the $1 billion that was supposed to save his empire. The price was catastrophic. Andrew sat paralyzed on the sofa for 10 minutes. Only when the faint hum of Manhattan traffic broke the silence did he snap out of it. Like a madman, he lunged across the couch, grabbed his dead phone, and bolted toward the foyer, shouting incoherently, "Charger! Where's my damn charger?" A maid, hearing the commotion, hurried out of the kitchen. Seeing his frantic state, she hastily handed him a charging cable. Andrew feverishly plugged it into an outlet. The second the Apple logo appeared on the screen, he impatiently bypassed the lock screen, scrolled to Catherine's name in his favorites, and hit call. The number you have dialed has been restricted. The cold, automated voice from the carrier made Andrew's hand flinch. He nearly dropped the device. He refused to give up. He tried calling from his corporate line, then from a burner phone app 5 or 6 times. The result was identical. Impossible, Andrew growled. He opened iMessage to text her, only to see the messages turn green and fail to deliver. He checked Instagram, LinkedIn, even WhatsApp. He had been scrubbed from her digital existence. Panic fully consumed him. Stumbling, he grabbed his damp coat from the floor and ran out the door. Sprinting past the dining room, he nearly knocked over a tray. "Mr. Walker, aren't you going to have breakfast? It's chilly out," the maid called after him. "What breakfast?" Andrew barked, without looking back. He burst out the front doors, threw himself into his car, and slammed the accelerator to the floor. The tires squealed against the pavement as he sped toward the Sterling family estate in Greenwich. 40 minutes later, his car screeched to a halt outside the massive iron gates of the Greenwich estate. Andrew didn't even bother closing his car door as he stumbled out and sprinted to the intercom, screaming, "Open up! It's Andrew Walker!" "I need to see Catherine." The intercom was silent for a few agonizing seconds before a cold security guard's voice crackled through. "Miss Sterling is not on the premises. Mr. Walker, please vacate the property." "Impossible!" Andrew screamed, his eyes bloodshot. "I'm her husband. I demand to see her open these gates right now, Mr. Walker." "Mr. Arthur Sterling has given strict orders that you are not to be permitted on the grounds. If you continue to cause a disturbance, we will contact the local police." As soon as the guard finished speaking, the high-end security camera mounted on the stone pillar pivoted, zooming in directly on Andrew's face. Andrew knew the Sterling family's absolute power and the ruthlessness of old Arthur Sterling. If the police were called, his family's reputation in high society would be permanently destroyed. Grinding his teeth, he backed away. But Andrew wasn't done. He pulled out his phone and dialed Catherine's grandfather. After an agonizingly long series of rings, the call connected. The old man's dominant, icy voice came through. "Andrew Walker, you actually have the audacity to call me." Andrew's tone instantly collapsed into submission, laced with desperation. "Grandpa Arthur. Mr. Sterling, I know I was wrong. I never should have left Kate alone on our wedding night. Please, could you just tell me where she is? I need to apologize to her. I want to bring her home." The old man let out a cold, mocking laugh, making no effort to hide his contempt. "Andrew, your apologies are completely useless to me, and they mean nothing to Kate. They only serve to make you feel better. I won't tell you where she is, and don't bother looking for her. From the exact moment you walked out on her for Allison Bennett, whatever existed between you two was dead." "Mr. Sterling, you can't do this!" Andrew's voice cracked with raw panic. "Walker Investments needs Kate's trust fund to survive. Without that liquidity, the company is going to drown. And what business is it of the Sterling family if Walker Investments goes under? That $1 billion is Kate's private capital, not a bailout fund to plug your company's bleeding balance sheets. Furthermore, as of today, Sterling Group is severing all corporate ties and withdrawing all institutional support from Walker Investments. Do not expect any mercy from us." Click. The line went dead. Andrew stood frozen with the phone pressed to his ear, utterly stunned. The Sterling family is withdrawing their support. That was infinitely worse than losing the $1 billion. His firm was already teetering on the edge. Without the Sterlings propping them up, Walker Investments wouldn't last 2 weeks. Teeth clenched, Andrew got back into his car and dialed his executive vice president. His voice was feral, as if he was ready to tear someone apart. "Deploy every single resource and contact the firm has. Find Catherine Sterling anywhere in the tri-state area. Check JFK, Newark, LaGuardia, private airstrips, Penn Station, every 5-star hotel, anywhere she could possibly be. Tear the city apart. You have to find her today. Mr. Walker, searching the entire eastern seaboard. If Miss Sterling is actively trying to stay off the grid, I'm afraid that's going to be near impossible." "Stop talking," Andrew roared. "Just do it. If you don't find her, you're fired." Hanging up, Andrew immediately called a contact he had inside the NYPD, begging him to run a trace on Catherine's movements. "Stan, I need a massive favor. Run flight manifests, train tickets, hotel registries, anything under Catherine Sterling. I have to locate her immediately." "Andrew, it's not that I don't want to help, but Miss Sterling's movement records are completely locked down. They aren't even showing up in our accessible databases. Word came down from the commissioner's office. Nobody touches her files." Andrew's stomach dropped into an abyss. Only now did he grasp that Catherine had planned everything with lethal precision. She hadn't just taken the $1 billion. She had completely erased her digital footprint. Even his favors with the NYPD were useless against the Sterling machine. He didn't surrender. He drove to the elite Fifth Avenue salon. Catherine frequented her favorite artisanal coffee shops and several boutique storefronts she had personally invested in. But everywhere he went, the answer was exactly the same. No one had seen her since the wedding yesterday. By lunchtime, his VP called back. The man's voice was devoid of hope. "Mr. Walker, we've turned over every stone. There are no flight records, domestic or international. No Amtrak tickets. We called every luxury hotel she's ever patronized. No reservations under her name or her aliases. Even the luxury loft she used to lease in Soho was cleared out months ago." Andrew gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. He looked up at the glaring afternoon sun and felt a bone-deep chill ravage his body. He had burned through every connection and resource he had, from the Greenwich estates to the Manhattan sidewalks, even hitting up law enforcement, and he hadn't found a single shadow of Catherine. He suddenly remembered Thomas's words from that morning. Catherine had laid out her escape route flawlessly. From the split second he made the choice to go after Allison, he had already stepped directly into her trap. Now his frantic, manic search was just a pathetic, laughable flailing. Andrew punched the steering wheel with all his might. The horn blared into the traffic. He stared blankly at the endless sea of pedestrians outside his windshield. His eyes were hollow, brimming with despair and bitter resentment. "Catherine, where the hell are you hiding? Are you truly so ruthless that you won't even give me 5 minutes to look you in the eye?" Andrew drove aimlessly through the Manhattan grid all morning. By the time the sun hit its peak, he realized he hadn't drank a drop of water. His throat felt like it was lined with sandpaper. He stared at his empty contacts list. He had nowhere left to go. Gritting his teeth, he whipped the car around and sped toward the Midtown luxury hotel where he had stashed Allison. The car screeched to a halt at the valet. Andrew didn't even bother adjusting his wrinkled collar as he stormed into the lobby and up the elevator. The second he pounded on her suite door, it swung open. Allison, draped in an expensive silk robe, her hair tousled in a curated messy chic style, greeted him with a sleepy, radiant smile. "Andrew, you're finally here. I waited for you all morning. I didn't even order room service." Andrew was in no mood for pleasantries. He shoved past her into the suite, collapsed heavily onto the plush sofa, grabbed a bottle of Fiji water from the coffee table and chugged it aggressively. Only after downing half the bottle did the burning in his throat subside slightly. Allison followed him, sitting close. She reached out to hold his hand, but Andrew violently slapped her hand away. Her fingers hovered in the air. A flash of grievance crossed her eyes, and she shifted into a soft, wounded voice. "Andrew, what's wrong? Did Catherine throw a fit? I told you you shouldn't have come for me last night. It's all my fault. Should I go and apologize to her for you?" "Apologize." The word triggered an explosion. He snapped his head toward her, his gaze radiating pure venom. "What the hell do you have to apologize for? If you hadn't kept blowing up my phone from JFK last night, I never would have left Catherine. And now look, she vanished with her billion-dollar trust fund. The Sterlings pulled all corporate backing, and my firm is hours away from filing Chapter. Cherie." Allison shrank back from his screaming. The wounded look in her eyes instantly morphed into defensive indignation. She sat up straight, her voice taking on an accusatory edge. "Andrew, what is that supposed to mean? Are you blaming me? If you hadn't begged me to move back to the States, I never would have quit my job in London. You told me I was the only woman you loved, that marrying Catherine was just a strategic merger for Walker Investments. And now that the market's crashing down on you, you're throwing me under the bus." Andrew aggressively rubbed his temples, feeling a migraine splitting his skull in two. "When I asked you to come back, I specifically told you to wait until I solidified my position with the Sterling board until I secured that $1 billion. Then I was going to handle the annulment quietly. But what did you do? You pulled this stunt on my wedding night. Now Catherine is a ghost, the capital is gone, and I'm ruined. Are you happy now?" Allison's face twisted. She bit her lip, tears welling in her eyes, and her volume spiked. "I'm not happy, Andrew. I gave you the best years of my life. Am I not worth $1 billion to you, Catherine? Leaving is a good thing. Finalize the annulment and marry me. I'm the one who will stand by you forever. I can help you run Walker Investments. I'm 10 times the woman that spoiled Sterling Princess ever was." Her words pushed Andrew entirely over the edge. He shot up from the sofa, looming over her with a look of absolute disgust and contempt. "Marry you? Have you looked in a mirror lately? You think the Sterling Empire's resources are just lying on the street waiting to be scooped up? Catherine is gone. My company is dead. I'm going to be a broke pariah, and you think you still want to be with me, Allison. Don't play dumb. I know exactly what your angle is. You just wanted to use me to become Mrs. Walker and secure equity in the firm." Allison hadn't expected him to eviscerate her so bluntly. Her face burned beet red. She leaped off the sofa, jabbing a manicured finger at Andrew's chest, screaming, "Andrew, you're a piece of trash. When you were begging me to come back, you sang a completely different tune. You swore I was your soulmate and Catherine was just a corporate stepping stone. And the second your bank accounts dry up, you throw me away like garbage. Soulmate." Andrew let out a hollow, terrifying laugh. His eyes were dead. "You want to know the truth. From the exact second you purposely delayed me from leaving this hotel last night, you became nothing to me. I don't have the time or the energy for your pathetic drama. If you have half a brain, pack your bags and fly back to London. Don't ever cause a problem for me again." Allison was completely blindsided. She stood frozen in shock for a few seconds before bursting into hysterical sobs, violently punching the couch cushions. "Andrew, you cannot do this to me. I ruined my life for you. You can't just throw me out. Catherine left you. You have to marry me. Or, I swear to God, I'll go to page 6. I'll go to the Wall Street Journal. I'll tell the whole world how the CEO of Walker Investments abandoned his bride on their wedding night to sleep with his mistress. I'll completely nuke your reputation." That was the absolute final straw. Andrew lunged, grabbing Allison by the wrist with such vicious force she screamed in agony. "Don't you dare. If you breathe a word of this to the press, I will make sure you are blacklisted from living or working in this city ever again." He leaned in his voice, a lethal whisper. "You think I didn't run a background check on you? You think I don't know about the mountain of debt you left behind in Europe? If you don't want all your dirty laundry aired out to the feds, you'll keep your damn mouth shut." Allison's sobbing instantly choked off. The blood drained from her face. She stared at Andrew in sheer terror, completely unaware he had investigated her financials. Her wrist throbbed with pain, her tears mixing with raw fear, but she couldn't force a single syllable out of her throat. Andrew shoved her arm away and wiped his hands on his trousers with deep revulsion, as if he had just touched raw sewage. He walked to the suite door, snatched up his coat, and without looking back, delivered his final verdict. "I extended the card on this room for 3 more days. If you aren't out of the country by the end of it, blame yourself for what happens next." With that, he slammed the heavy hotel door shut, trapping Allison's wails and curses inside. Andrew stood in the opulent hallway, leaning his back against the cold wallpaper, feeling completely, utterly hollowed out. He had wanted to vent his rage, but instead he had permanently severed his last tie. Now he had lost Catherine, his billion-dollar lifeline, and his only remaining confidant. He pulled out his phone and, against all logic, dialed Catherine's number one last time. The same cold, automated carrier message played in his ear. Andrew let out a bitter, broken chuckle, shoved the phone into his pocket, and dragged himself toward the elevators. He had no idea where to go, no idea how to save his company, and no idea how to save his life. Morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my Hamptons home office, illuminating my mahogany desk. I had just signed the final authorization consolidating my offshore assets when Thomas walked in holding a perfectly pressed, bespoke charcoal gray power suit. "Miss Sterling," Mr. Arthur called. "He requested your presence at the corporate headquarters. He mentioned there's a critical overseas acquisition that requires your immediate input. The driver is waiting at the front entrance." I set my Mont Blanc pen down, stood up, and took the suit from him. "Understood. I'll be down in 10 minutes. Swapping out the delicate, tragic image of a bride in a wedding dress for the sharp, flawlessly tailored silhouette of a corporate executive, I looked at myself in the mirror. My aesthetic was now ruthless, razor-sharp, and commanding. I adjusted my blowout, grabbed my Hermes Birkin from the credenza, and headed downstairs. The black Bentley glided smoothly into the VIP underground garage of the Sterling Group skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan. Barely stepping off the private elevator, I ran directly into the chief administrative officer. He froze in his tracks for a split second before hurriedly bowing his head. "Miss Sterling, welcome back. Mr. Arthur is waiting for you in the executive boardroom on the top floor." I gave a microscopic nod, not uttering a word. As the elevator doors slid shut behind me, the junior executives whispering in the corridors instantly fell dead silent. Their eyes tracked me like a predator. Yesterday, they had looked at me as the family's carefree heiress. Today, there was palpable awe and terror in their eyes. After all, the rumors of the nuclear fallout at the Walker penthouse had already begun bleeding into Wall Street, though no one dared speak of it above a whisper. Inside the top-floor boardroom, my grandfather and a dozen C-suite executives were fiercely debating over a projection screen. Seeing me enter, my grandfather beamed and waved me over. "Kate, you're here. Have a seat. We're right in the middle of analyzing this renewable energy infrastructure project overseas." I took the seat at the head of the table, my eyes scanning the data metrics flashing on the screen. I tapped my manicured fingernails against the polished oak table and spoke in a calm yet undeniably authoritative tone. "The primary bottleneck on this initiative isn't capital expenditure. It's the supply chain logistics. The client is demanding the first rollout in 90 days. Our domestic manufacturing lines can't scale that quickly, but our dormant facility in Southeast Asia is sitting empty. If we deploy an elite engineering task force over there, the bottleneck is eliminated." The room full of veteran executives went stiff. The chief technology officer hurriedly interjected Miss Sterling with, "All due respect, the hardware at the Southeast Asian plant has been offline for 6 months. Retrofitting it to spec would require massive capital injection. Furthermore, the local workforce lacks the technical certification for this grade of tech. It poses a massive quality control liability." I raised my eyes, locking onto him. I pulled a dossier from my portfolio and tossed it onto the center of the table. I had our legal and tech teams compile this audit overnight. The hardware in that facility only requires superficial retrofitting. I have already authorized a $50 million wire from my private trust to cover the upgrades. As for the workforce, I secured a contract with a top-tier German industrial training firm at 4:00 a.m. They touch down in exactly 3 days. We will absolutely hit the 90-day delivery window. The executives scrambled to open the dossier. The deeper they read, the wider their eyes got. The debate was instantly silenced. My grandfather looked at me with unrestrained pride. He slammed his hand on the table. Brilliant! We execute Kate's strategy immediately. This contract has been stalled for 2 weeks because nobody in this room had the spine to make a call. Now that you've taken the reins, I can finally breathe. I took the master contract from an assistant, flipped to the final signature page, and signed my name. The stroke of my pen was sharp and aggressive. Notify the International Division. The factory retrofit begins by end of day. Legal will finalize the vendor contracts, and finance will wire the capital to the designated escrows. I want the first comprehensive progress report on my desk in exactly 1 week. The executives responded in unison, a chorus of absolute submission. Yes, Madam Director. From Catherine the heiress to Madam Director took exactly 30 minutes. It signaled my official hostile takeover of the highest echelons of Sterling Group. After the board meeting, the moment I stepped into my newly renovated corner office, a video conference queued up from our overseas partners. Miss Sterling, we just reviewed your aggressive rollout strategy. I must say your operational pivot is more ruthless than we anticipated. We are prepared to formally sign the contract today, and we are willing to bump the acquisition price up by 2%. I offered a faint, shark-like smile. My tone was measured. Business is built on mutual prosperity. Provided you hit your delivery and QC metrics, I assure you this is merely the first of many lucrative ventures between our firms. Just as the call ended, my executive assistant stepped in, holding another stack of files. Madam Director, this is the morning proposal from Walker Investments. They are requesting a 90-day extension on their rolling credit facility, utilizing the same subsidized interest rates the Sterling family previously guaranteed. I glanced at Andrew's desperate signature at the bottom of the page, tapped my index finger against the cover sheet, and let out a cold laugh. Draft a formal reply. As of this exact second, Sterling Group is severing all institutional ties and operational contracts with Walker Investments. All subsidized rates and grace periods are permanently revoked. They have exactly 30 days to repay their outstanding corporate debt to this firm in full. If the wire doesn't clear, refer them to litigation and file to freeze their assets. My assistant paused for a fraction of a second before nodding sharply. Understood. I'll execute the orders immediately. The moment he walked out, Thomas called my private line. His voice carried a rare note of grim satisfaction. Miss Sterling, intel just came across my desk. Several major partners of Walker Investments caught wind that you assumed control of Sterling Group today. Factoring in the rumors of your split from Andrew, they have already initiated capital withdrawal. Walker Investments stock opened the bell down 5%. I leaned back in my ergonomic leather chair, gazing out at the breathtaking Manhattan skyline through the glass, and replied indifferently, predictable. When he made the choice to cross me, he should have calculated the margin of error. Within the hour, the PR department at Sterling Group was flooded with inquiries from Bloomberg, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal. Everyone was sniffing around the sudden implosion of my marriage to Andrew and the violent severing of corporate ties. I authorized PR to release a surgical 2-sentence statement. Miss Catherine Sterling has formally initiated annulment proceedings against Mr. Andrew Walker. All strategic decisions executed by Sterling Group are based strictly on fiduciary duty to our shareholders and are entirely independent of personal affiliations. The press release sent shockwaves through Wall Street. Pundits praised my cold-blooded efficiency, some gossiped about the failed high society marriage, and a few rival hedge funds waited like vultures to see if Sterling Group would stumble. But they didn't realize that armed with a $1 billion war chest and the absolute authority of the Sterling Empire, I wasn't just built to weather the collapse of Walker Investments. I was built to command the entire storm. Andrew was snapped out of his catatonic daze at the hotel valet by a frantic phone call from his executive secretary. The second he stepped off the elevator into his corporate suite at Walker Investments, he found his executive VP standing in front of the Bloomberg terminal, pale as a ghost. The green ticker line that had opened down 5% had now violently plummeted by 12%, nosediving like a jet with severed wings. Mr. Walker, thank God you're here. The VP's voice trembled uncontrollably. He slammed a stack of red-flagged folders onto Andrew's desk. These are the contract terminations that hit in the last 20 minutes. Our primary developer for the Miami project, the lead institutional investor for the West Coast Renewables Initiative, and 3 of our cornerstone supply chain vendors, they've all invoked their exit clauses, even that private equity deal we were closing. They called to say they're pausing negotiations to monitor our structural stability. Andrew snatched the folders, his hands shaking violently. Flipping through 3 pages of legalese, he hurled the binders furiously across the room. Why? We had long-term ironclad agreements. What the hell spooked them? The VP swallowed hard. His voice dropped to a terrified whisper. Mr. Walker, it's Sterling Group. Miss... Sterling issued a press release this morning confirming your annulment and officially terminating all joint ventures with us. They revoked our credit subsidies and demanded total debt repayment within 30 days. Wall Street knows exactly how lethal the Sterlings are. The second the street saw that everyone panicked, they're liquidating to avoid the blast radius. Catherine! Andrew hissed through clenched teeth. His chest felt so compressed it was going to explode. Was she truly this vicious? Did she really plan to leave him with absolutely no way out? Before he could even finish the thought, the heavy desk phone rang. It was the vice president of their primary commercial bank. Andrew took a deep, shuddering breath, punched the speaker button, and tried to project stability. Mark, I was just about to call you. Regarding our $5 million bridge loan, can we restructure that for a 6-month extension? Andrew, I'm incredibly sorry. Corporate just handed down an absolute mandate. Factoring in your firm's real-time liquidity crisis and the downgrade of your corporate credit rating, not only can we not extend the facility, we are calling in the note. We require immediate repayment of the $5 million in full. You have 1 week. If the funds aren't wired, we will initiate immediate asset seizure proceedings. What? Andrew's voice cracked, professionalism entirely abandoned. You told me last week the extension was a formality. Why the sudden pivot? Andrew, our hands are tied. A managing director at Sterling Group made a phone call. Combine that with your stock in freefall. The bank is just mitigating its exposure. Please understand my position. Click. The dial tone echoed through the office. Andrew collapsed lifelessly into his executive chair, the room spinning violently around him. A $5 million loan due in 7 days. Millions more owed to Sterling Group in 30 days. Institutional partners, fleeing like rats on a sinking ship. The firm's capital arteries had been completely severed. He wouldn't even be able to make payroll by Friday. Right on cue, the chief financial officer walked into the office. His face was even more grim than the VP's. He held a financial ledger. Mr. Walker, total payroll overhead for this cycle, plus the immediate penalty clauses for the breached contracts, totals roughly $8 million. We currently have just over $3 million in liquid cash across all operating accounts. We can't cover it. And worse, 4 of our senior department heads just tendered their resignations via email. They were approached by rival firms offering signing bonuses and equity. Resignations. Andrew bolted upright, lunged across the desk, and snatched the printouts from the CFO's hands. These guys have been with me since the startup phase. How could they abandon me right now, Mr. Walker? In this climate, everyone is terrified of missing their mortgages when we inevitably file for bankruptcy. They're being offered double their salaries and guaranteed stock. They're just securing their own families. Andrew crushed the resignation letters in his fist until his knuckles popped. He suddenly recalled Catherine warning him months ago to restructure his cash flow reserves and lock down his core executives with better vesting schedules. But back then, he had been too distracted, sneaking around with Allison to care. Only now did he realize what an arrogant fool he had been. He pulled out his phone and began desperately calling his Ivy League fraternity brothers and Wall Street golf buddies, begging for emergency capital. But as he scrolled through the contacts, the men who used to call him brother either sent him straight to voicemail or offered pathetic excuses. Victor, it's Andrew. Listen, I need you to float me $3 million for 30 days. Name your interest rate. Andrew, man. It's not that I don't want to help, but my own liquidity is tied up right now. Plus, Sterling Group sent out a back-channel memo. Anyone who throws Walker Investments a life raft becomes an enemy of Arthur Sterling. I can't risk my own fund going to war with the Sterlings. You're gonna have to find another playman. Hanging up, Andrew violently hurled his phone at the mahogany desk. The screen shattered into a spiderweb of glass. He dragged himself over to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked down at the street below. Vertigo hit him hard. He had always genuinely believed that even without the Sterling family's backing, his genius alone kept Walker Investments afloat. Now he understood the brutal truth: his entire empire was built on the foundation of Catherine's money. Without it, he was just a hollow shell collapsing at the slightest breeze. Suddenly, his cracked phone buzzed on the desk. It was Allison. This time she wasn't crying. She was demanding. Andrew, when are you going to wire me the money for that luxury condo you promised me? And my European debts, you said you'd clear them. I need that money right now. Wire me $500. 000 today. Andrew didn't even have the cash to pay his employees. Suffocating on his own rage, he roared into the phone, "I have no money. The company is filing for bankruptcy. Never call me again." Bankruptcy. Who are you trying to fool? You're the CEO of a Wall Street firm. How can you be broke? I don't care about your excuses. If the wire doesn't hit my account, I'm marching down to your lobby and causing a scene. So, massive. The entire financial district will know what a deadbeat sociopath you are. Don't you dare. Andrew shook with volcanic rage, but he knew Allison was entirely capable of it. If she threw a tantrum in his lobby right now, whatever microscopic shred of reputation he had left would be incinerated. While he was shouting, the office door flew open again. A terrified junior receptionist rushed in. "Mr. Walker, we have a massive problem. The lobby is swarming with reporters from Bloomberg and CNBC. They're demanding comments on the insolvency rumors and your annulment, and half a dozen of our vendors are physically blocking the front doors, demanding their penalty payments." Andrew dragged himself to the window and looked straight down at the avenue. It was a zoo. A massive mob had formed around his building's entrance. Camera flashes strobed relentlessly. Angry contractors waved manila folders like pitchforks. It was total chaos. He collapsed to his knees, burying his face in his hands. For the very first time in his pampered life, he truly understood what it meant to have absolutely no way out. Andrew sat paralyzed in his office for another 30 minutes, listening to the muffled chants of creditors from 30 stories down. He scrolled through his empty, shattered phone once more, before finally grinding his teeth and making the most humiliating, gut-wrenching decision of his existence. He had to go to Sterling Group and beg Catherine for mercy on his knees. He didn't even bother fixing his tie or grabbing an umbrella. He bolted out the backdoor freight elevator, flagged down a yellow cab in the alley, and sped toward the Sterling Group headquarters. When the cab pulled up to the base of the towering glass skyscraper, his legs felt like they were filled with concrete. But the thought of Chapter 11 bankruptcy and the mob of angry vendors forced him out of the car. The security receptionist in the pristine marble lobby froze when she saw him, then her face turned to stone. She stepped out from behind the desk, blocking the elevator banks. "Mr. Walker, the director has given explicit orders that you are barred from the premises. Please exit the building." "I need to see the director. It's an absolute emergency," Andrew pleaded, his voice breaking. "Just let me up for 1 minute, just 60 seconds. "Mr. Walker, those are the director's absolute orders. I cannot bypass them. If you refuse to leave, I am signaling armed security." Andrew knew arguing with her was pointless. He backed out through the revolving doors onto the massive public plaza outside the building. He took a massive, shuddering breath, and right there in front of the bustling midtown crowd, he dropped heavily to his knees. The hollow thud of his kneecaps hitting the concrete echoed. The theatrical gesture instantly stopped traffic. Tourists in Wall Street suits halted in their tracks. Sterling Group employees pressed their faces against the lobby glass. Several paparazzi, who had been staking out the building, instantly sprinted over their massive telephoto lenses, zeroing in on the kneeling CEO. "Look, isn't that the CEO of Walker Investments? Why the hell is he on his knees in front of Sterling Group? He's probably begging his ex-wife for a bailout. His stock is basically penny status right now. Serves him right. Who the hell abandons an heiress on their wedding night for a side piece?" The vicious whispers stung Andrew like a swarm of hornets. His face burned with unprecedented humiliation. He wanted the earth to split open and swallow him whole, but he forced himself to look up at the towering glass doors and screamed, "Kate, I know I was wrong. I'm here to apologize. I'm begging you for the sake of everything we used to. Save my company, save me." His screaming drew an even larger crowd. The plaza was now packed with hundreds of people holding up their iPhones, recording and live streaming his pathetic display. A moment later, the massive glass doors slid open. First, a phalanx of men in tailored black suits marched out to push the crowd back. Then, flanked by Thomas and a cadre of senior executives, Catherine slowly stepped out. She wore an impeccably tailored, razor-sharp black power suit. Her hair was pulled back into a severe, elegant chignon. Her makeup was flawless and intimidating. Every click of her Louboutin heels against the marble reverberated directly into Andrew's soul. She stopped 10 feet away from him. Her gaze was chillingly placid. There wasn't a single drop of emotion in her eyes. Seeing her, Andrew's bloodshot eyes lit up with desperate hope. He actually crawled forward on the concrete. His tailored trousers ripped, scraping his knees against the asphalt, but he didn't feel the pain. "Kate, I was wrong. I never should have left you on our wedding night. For Allison, I lost my damn mind. Forgive me. I'll kneel here all day. Hit me, curse me out, do whatever you have to do. Just please save Walker Investments. Save me." With those words, he legitimately slammed his forehead against the pavement. A dull thwack sounded, and a red welt instantly bloomed on his skin. The camera shutters fired like machine guns. The crowd gasped and murmured louder, but Catherine remained utterly immovable. She even took a half step back, dodging his grotesque display of submission. "Andrew, what exactly are you doing? Our annulment papers are already filed. What business is your failing company to me?" Andrew snapped his head up. His face was streaked with grime and tears. He looked utterly pathetic. "Kate, even if there's no love left between us, think of our history. Think of how close our families were. Just bail me out this one time. If you inject the capital, I swear to God, I'll sign over 50% of Walker Investments voting shares to you. I'll be your dog. I'm begging you." Hearing this, Catherine let out a soft, melodic laugh. It wasn't loud, but in the tense silence it carried across the entire plaza. "Our history, Andrew. When you were speeding through a hurricane to JFK on our wedding night, did you think about our history? When you were holed up in a hotel suite with Allison Bennett, leaving me alone in a cold, empty penthouse, did you think about the bond between our families?" She paused, then projected her voice with crystal clarity so every camera mic could pick it up. "I want everyone here to understand exactly what happened. On the night of our wedding, this man, my soon-to-be ex-husband, abandoned me in our bridal suite to pick up his mistress, Allison Bennett, from the airport. When he finally bothered to come home the next morning, he discovered that I had packed my bags and taken my $1 billion nuptial trust fund with me. Now his firm is bleeding out, and he comes here to grovel on his knees for a bailout. I ask you all, do I owe this man a single cent?" Her words detonated like a bomb across the plaza. "Oh my God, it's actually true. What an absolute scumbag. Took her $1 billion back. Hell yes. That is a queen right there. Bleed the bastard dry. How does he even have the nerve to show his face here?" The paparazzi swarmed closer. Andrew's face turned the color of ash. He never expected Catherine to publicly execute him in front of the New York press corps, permanently obliterating his dignity. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but his lips just trembled. He couldn't form a coherent sound. Catherine looked down at his broken, ruined form without a microscopic trace of pity. "Andrew, remember this moment. Everything happening to you right now is the direct consequence of your own choices. When you chose to betray me, you signed your own death warrant. Walker Investments will pay back every single dollar it owes Sterling Group. And as for your begging, you can kneel on this concrete until the end of time, and my heart will not beat a single second faster for you." Having delivered her verdict, she turned on her heel and walked back toward the glass doors. After 3 steps, she paused, looking over her shoulder at Thomas. "Thomas, have security clear the plaza. We cannot have vagrants disrupting the corporation's workflow." "Right away, Madam Director." The security guards immediately advanced on the kneeling, Andrew grabbing him by the armpits and violently hauling him up. Andrew thrashed wildly, screaming, "Kate, I'm begging you, please." But Catherine's silhouette had already disappeared behind the tinted glass doors. She never looked back. The crowd pointed and laughed, snapping photos of his disgraced face as the guards dragged him to the curb and tossed him into the gutter. Allison Bennett, discarded by Andrew and left without a dime to her name, focused all her psychotic rage on Catherine. Sitting in her comped hotel room watching CNBC segments dissect Catherine's absolute triumph on Wall Street and seeing footage of a pathetic Andrew being dragged away from Sterling Group, her eyes filled with venomous hatred. "Catherine, this is all your fault. If it weren't for you, Andrew never would have treated me like this. I wouldn't be drowning in debt." Allison's nails dug so hard into her palms, they drew blood. "I'm going to destroy you," she hissed at the TV. "I'm going to make you feel what it's like to lose everything." After frantic plotting, Allison targeted the massive Southeast Asian renewable energy contract Catherine had just championed. Using the last of her maxed-out credit cards, she accessed the dark web and hired a team of elite corporate forgers. She fabricated a flawless dossier of evidence, a fake joint venture contract between Catherine and a shell company in the Cayman Islands, forged wire transfer receipts, and a sworn affidavit from a non-existent internal whistleblower. Her narrative was designed to frame Catherine for utilizing the overseas project to embezzle $5 million in corporate funds, committing federal wire fraud. Once the package was finalized, Allison anonymously forwarded the dossier to several notorious financial tabloids and simultaneously submitted it to the SEC's whistleblower portal and the Department of Justice. She timed the detonation perfectly, exactly 24 hours before the official signing ceremony between Sterling Group and their international partners. The bomb went off. The hashtag number Catherine Sterling fraud skyrocketed to the #1 trending topic on X. News vans swarmed the Sterling Group Plaza once again. Federal agents from the SEC arrived unannounced, demanding the project be halted pending a full federal audit. Inside the executive boardroom, pure panic reigned. The C-suite executives were sweating through their custom suits. The chief technology officer looked like he was about to faint. "Madam Director, the optics on Twitter are catastrophic. Our European partners just sent an urgent email asking if we should delay the signing ceremony. The SEC agents are sitting in the lobby waiting to serve subpoenas. What do we do?" But Catherine was unnervingly serene. She was casually flipping through the forged dossier Allison had leaked. She ran a manicured finger over the signature on the fraudulent contract and let out a cold, amused chuckle. "The forgery on this signature is remarkably high tier. However, whenever I authorize capital expenditure documents, I employ a proprietary microsignature." She pointed to the bottom right loop of her name. "Look here." The executives crowded around and squinted, spotting a microscopic, virtually invisible cross etched into the ink. On the forged document, obviously this failsafe is missing. Now let's look at the wire logs. Catherine continued, holding up a second sheet. "Every 8-figure wire transfer out of Sterling Group undergoes a triple-blind verification protocol. The corporate seal stamped on this document is an obsolete design, and the routing numbers do not match our secure SWIFT codes. As for the whistleblower's sworn affidavit, HR already ran the Social Security number. This person has never existed on our payroll." Just then, the boardroom doors opened, and Thomas strode in carrying a pristine iPad. "Madam Director, the investigation is complete. We tracked the digital footprint. These fraudulent documents were commissioned by Allison Bennett. We have successfully intercepted her encrypted communications with the dark web forgers as well as the offshore Bitcoin ledgers, proving she funded them. We also pulled CCTV footage from the FedEx Dropbox, showing her personally mailing the physical copies to the SEC. It turned out Catherine had fully anticipated that a desperate Allison would attempt a kamikaze strike. She had instructed Thomas to put a private intelligence detail on Allison the moment she left the hotel. Every breath Allison took had been monitored. Catherine nodded, her voice radiating absolute lethal authority. "Notify the General Counsel. I want a press release issued immediately. Publish the forensic breakdown of my microsignature, the SWIFT code discrepancies, and every ounce of surveillance data Thomas collected on Allison Bennett. Furthermore, forward all this evidence to the SEC agents downstairs and file a massive civil and criminal suit against Miss Bennett for defamation, corporate espionage, and federal wire fraud." She paused, adjusting her cuffs. "And schedule a press conference in the main atrium in exactly 1 hour. I will execute her publicly." An hour later, the Sterling Group press conference went live across every major financial network. Sitting behind a podium facing a sea of flashbulbs, Catherine first presented the authentic ledger of the overseas project. Then she systematically displayed Allison's dark web chat logs, the crypto transfer receipts, and the damning CCTV footage of Allison mailing the package. Regarding these absurd allegations of embezzlement, Catherine stated, her voice slicing through the room like a scalpel. "They are entirely fabricated. This so-called evidence was manufactured by Miss Allison Bennett as an act of desperate retaliation against Sterling Group and myself. We have already referred the criminal findings to the DOJ, and we expect a federal indictment within the hour." The press corps exploded with frantic questions. "Miss Sterling, why would Allison Bennett target you? What is the history there?" Catherine looked dead center into the primary camera lens. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of an executioner's axe. "Allison Bennett is the woman my former husband, Andrew Walker, was having an affair with. On the night of our wedding, Andrew abandoned me to pick her up from JFK Airport. That is why I initiated the annulment. Subsequently, Mr. Walker's firm spiraled into insolvency. Miss Bennett, having failed to secure the billionaire lifestyle she thought she had stolen, decided to vent her psychotic rage on me by orchestrating this pathetic smear campaign." On the massive LED screen behind her, the presentation switched. It played the dashcam footage of Andrew speeding to JFK in his tuxedo on their wedding night, followed by an audio recording Thomas had legally procured of Allison screaming at Andrew in the hotel room, demanding a luxury condo. It was a flawless, irrefutable killshot. Following the press conference, the public narrative violently inverted. The internet tore Allison apart, branding her a delusional sociopath, while universally praising Catherine's terrifying intellect and unbreakable poise. The SEC officially closed their inquiry within the hour, clearing Sterling Group entirely, and immediately referred the matter to the FBI, who fast-tracked an arrest warrant for Allison. Allison, hiding out in a cheap motel in Queens after her hotel card was declined, was scrolling through Twitter watching the absolute destruction of her life in real time. Seeing the news that federal warrants were out for her, she panicked, stuffed her clothes into a suitcase, and bolted for the door. The second she stepped out of her motel room, she was blinded by the red and blue flashing lights of the NYPD and FBI. Allison Bennett, you are under arrest for federal wire fraud, extortion, and perjury. Hands behind your back. Allison's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the filthy concrete, sobbing hysterically. It wasn't me, Catherine set me up. She made me do it. But no one cared about her screaming. 2 agents hauled her up, slapped cold steel handcuffs on her wrists, and shoved her into the back of an unmarked SUV. Soon after, her entire history was unraveled by journalists, the massive credit card debt in Europe, a falsified college degree, and a long history of targeting wealthy married men. She was utterly radioactive. Her family back home completely disowned her. All that awaited her was a concrete cell and a multi-year federal sentence. 3 days after Allison's spectacular arrest, every major financial publication blasted the headline, Walker Investments Files for Chapter 7, Liquidation. Andrew had liquidated his personal penthouse, his stock portfolios, and even the Ferrari he had driven for barely a year, but it was like throwing pennies into a volcano. It wasn't nearly enough to cover the massive corporate debts. In the end, he could only stand on the sidewalk entirely powerless, watching a crew physically pry the silver Walker Investments lettering off the side of the Midtown skyscraper. His former Wall Street brothers treated him like a leper. Even his extended family blocked his phone number. One bleak afternoon, Andrew, with exactly $42 left to his name, sat on a milk crate next to a Manhattan construction site. He was wearing a dirt-stained hard hat, eating a stale, processed turkey sandwich from a corner bodega. His cracked phone buzzed with a breaking news alert from the Wall Street Journal. The headline read, Sterling Group acquires remains of Walker Investments. Kate Sterling dubbed the new Queen of Wall Street. He stared blankly at the embedded photo. It showed Catherine in a breathtaking, custom-tailored white suit, cutting a ceremonial ribbon for the launch of the Southeast Asian Renewable Facility. She was radiant, flanked by international billionaires and senators. It was a sickening, agonizing contrast to the pathetic reality he was currently living. His filthy hand trembled as he gripped the shattered phone. Crumbs of stale bread fell onto his scuffed work boots. The food in his mouth turned entirely to ash. If I hadn't let Allison manipulate me, if I hadn't walked out that door into the rain, the man standing next to her, sharing that billion-dollar empire, would be me. But reality offered no reset buttons. He had taken a sledgehammer to his own life, and he was the only one to blame. Meanwhile, in the ultra-exclusive penthouse dining room of the Sterling Group skyscraper, a victory gala was in full swing. A massive champagne tower shimmered under the crystal chandeliers. Wall Street titans and politicians raised their glasses. Grandfather Arthur, watching his unstoppable granddaughter, couldn't suppress a massive grin. Kate acquiring Walker's manufacturing pipelines for pennies on the dollar and flawlessly launching the overseas infrastructure. You expanded our industrial footprint by 30% in a single quarter. It was an absolute masterclass. Catherine raised her crystal flute and clinked it against her grandfather's. Grandpa, the team, executed it flawlessly. Besides, Walker's assets were perfectly positioned for our integration. We bought them at fire sale prices and plugged our own supply chain gaps. You could say it all worked out for the best. The head of international operations eagerly chimed in. Madam Director, if it weren't for your lethal market foresight and ruthless acquisition of the Walker assets, we wouldn't have doubled our production capacity so fast. Now the top 3 green energy conglomerates in Europe are practically begging us to sign exclusive 10-year contracts. At that moment, Thomas stepped smoothly to Catherine's side and whispered, Miss Sterling, an update crossed my desk. Andrew Walker sold his final asset and is now renting a cot in a boarding house in Queens. He actually attempted to apply for a manual labor position at one of our subsidiary warehouses, but site security recognized him and physically removed him from the premises. Catherine took a slow sip of her vintage champagne, her expression utterly unchanged. Ignore him. He chose his bed, now he gets to rot in it. He no longer exists in our universe. As the gala reached its peak, the editor-in-chief of Forbes magazine approached Catherine, requesting an exclusive cover interview. The headline was already drafted. From the bridal suite to the boardroom. How Kate Sterling turned a $1 billion betrayal into a Wall Street empire. Her PR assistant leaned in nervously. Madam Director, should we authorize this? It might stir up the tabloid gossip again. But Catherine smiled, a predator in complete control. Book it. I'll use the platform to send a message. A woman's ultimate insurance policy is never a marriage certificate. It's her own lethal competence. Following the Forbes cover story, Catherine became a global icon. Her ruthless ascent became the ultimate case study for a generation of corporate women. Sterling Group's stock valuations skyrocketed, and through her aggressive expansion strategies, the $1 billion trust fund she had walked away with had effectively tripled. She wasn't just an heiress anymore. She was a self-made titan. A few months later, as Catherine finished signing off on an international merger, Thomas brought her another file. Miss Sterling, the verdict came down in federal court today for Allison Bennett. Given the magnitude of the wire fraud and perjury, the judge sentenced her to 5 years in federal prison, without the possibility of early parole. The European debt collectors have officially seized whatever assets she had left. Her family refuses to accept her calls. She is completely alone. Catherine's pen paused over a contract for a fraction of a second, before gracefully completing her signature. She bought the ticket, she takes the ride. The system works. By the end of the fiscal year, Sterling Group had monopolized the North American renewable energy sector. Catherine was unanimously elected as the chairperson of the Global Energy Alliance. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, she commanded the stage as the lead American delegate. Her flawless bilingual delivery and razor-sharp macroeconomic forecasting left the world's most powerful billionaires in absolute awe. After her keynote, the CEO of a European energy conglomerate approached her, handing over a platinum business card practically begging for a joint venture. Miss Sterling, your sheer ruthlessness and strategic vision are terrifying in the best possible way. I am absolutely certain an alliance between our firms would yield unprecedented dividends. Catherine smiled warmly, shaking his hand with a firm, dominant grip. Mutually assured prosperity is the only way forward. Returning to New York, Catherine stepped off her private jet at Teterboro to a motorcade and a phalanx of loyal executives waiting for her on the tarmac. Sitting in the back of the Escalade watching the glittering Manhattan skyline approach, she caught her reflection in the darkened window. She thought back to that rainy wedding night and the sight of Andrew's back as he walked out the door. It felt like a nightmare from a previous lifetime. She now reigned from a fortress of her own making, protected by an army of loyal lieutenants and an untouchable corporate legacy. She no longer had to diminish herself or suffer the indignity of upholding a fraudulent hollow marriage. One rare Sunday afternoon, Catherine sat on the manicured terrace of the Greenwich estate sipping Earl Grey tea with her grandfather. Arthur looked at her, his eyes softening with age. "Kate, when you married that Walker boy, I lost sleep terrified that he was going to break your spirit. But looking at you now, I see I was an old fool. You're more lethal than anyone who's ever carried the Sterling name." Catherine poured her grandfather a fresh cup of tea and smiled. "Grandpa, the Sterling family gave me my armor, but that betrayal gave me my edge. It taught me the only thing in this world that will never abandon you is your own power." Just then, her phone buzzed. A private investigator had forwarded a candid photo. It was Andrew, caked in sweat and cement dust, hauling cinder blocks at a low-income housing development site. Word was he was working 80-hour weeks just to stay out of debtor's prison, a hollowed-out ghost of the arrogant Wall Street prince he once was. Catherine glanced at the image for a single second, then deleted it permanently. To her, Andrew Walker and Allison Bennett were nothing more than microscopic speed bumps in her rearview mirror. Her future was the limitless expanse of the global market, a brilliant, violently beautiful life that belonged entirely to her. 6 months later, at the Waldorf Astoria, Catherine stepped onto the grand stage, in a striking crimson Alexander McQueen gown, to accept the award for Global Businesswoman of the Year. Basking in the blinding glare of 1,000 camera flashes, her smile was magnetic, composed, and absolute. The grand ballroom erupted into a standing ovation. The master of ceremonies leaned into the microphone. "Miss Sterling, the entire world is watching. What is the one piece of advice you would give to women watching you tonight?" Catherine gripped the crystal podium. Her voice rang out, echoing with unbreakable authority. "Never ever outsource your survival. Your confidence, your capital, your future, they must reside entirely in your own hands. Build your own empire, become your own weapon, and when you are finally strong enough, every storm they send to destroy, you will merely become the wind at your back." As she finished, the applause thundered so loudly it shook the crystal chandeliers. Standing at the apex of the world, looking out over the sea of powerful figures, Catherine knew with absolute certainty that she had finally conquered it all.